Hello friends! So, as you may have heard, DrexFest is coming up this coming weekend. Oh, you hadn't heard that yet? Oh, well, permit me to be just a wee bit obnoxious and remind you again that DrexFest 2020 is coming up this coming weekend. Now here's the thing! I am betting that at least some of you out there are interested in hosting online events of your own. So I am going to take a page from somebody else's playbook and tell you a little bit about the process of how DrexFest is being created, because you never know, it might help you out with your own event. Drex here from DrexFactor.com, bringing you poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain, and today I am starting the first of a multi-part series on how to host an online flow festival. Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, LMF Props, Spinballs, and Ultrapoi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these awesome companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this video. Cool, so for the first part in this series, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of some high-level stuff. That is, why do you want to host an event, and what are some of the first questions that you should be asking and answering for yourself in the pursuit of doing so. Of course, you may arrive at completely different answers than I do, but I do hope that in sharing with you my process, it'll help you figure out your own process for these things, yeah? So let's start out super big picture, because I think that one of those things that we really ought to ask ourselves is, what exactly is an online flow festival? So many of you out there doubtlessly have attended in-person flow events, whether they be fire drums, wildfire, kinetic fire, etc. Basically, these are weekend-long events where you can show up and take workshops on how to spin different props, and in the evening you get exposed to musical acts and get to spin fire and everything. Now, as I'm here recording this, the world is still in the midst of lockdown with the COVID-19 outbreak. And believe you me, I am really curious to see how this video ages on that one. But as it is right now, all of the flow events for the year, at least the in-person ones, are canceled. It's going to be a year without flow festivals. And in some cases, this means that there are companies that were really hoping to have that income that are now in kind of financial dire straits. And in other cases, it just means that there are people that were expecting to get to see each other and hang out that are not going to get that opportunity to do so, at least in person, right? And mixed into all this is the fact that there are a number of different video conferencing and webinar software pieces out there that it turns out can give us little bits and pieces of the experience of attending one of these flow events. So several people have jumped down that rabbit hole to see if they can create an experience that, if it doesn't approximate what happens at a flow festival, maybe it can create something else that's just as good. And I feel like the results of these have been kind of mixed thus far. It's clear that this is a format that's new to everybody and we're still kind of figuring it out, but it is also very clearly something that people are super interested in figuring out. So there are still people that want to teach, people that still want to connect with Flomies far away, and of course there will always be musicians that want to have an audience to play for and everything. So, you know, it makes sense why people would still be hosting these flow events and everything, but why would I in particular want to do that? So here's where it gets kind of interesting. You know, after all, I built up a pretty sizable fan base by posting my video tutorials on YouTube and Instagram and everything, and I had already done some in-person events doing workshop tours in the past couple years, and, you know, in terms of live events, I feel like a festival is kind of like a few steps up from touring, but fundamentally the skills involved in it are not that different, right? There is a whole element to that is booking and doing marketing and everything and selling tickets to the event. So, you know, yeah, it seemed like a pretty logical pivot to me. And here's my hook. I turned 40 this year. Now, I will admit that earlier on in the year, I had kind of been thinking about this milestone as being something that I wanted to celebrate in kind of a grand fashion. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 outbreak had other ideas, and my capacity to be able to celebrate that birthday in an in-person way, in the way that I wanted to, was just not going to happen. So instead, I figured, hey, an online event might be a good alternative. Plus which, like, it's one of those things that I feel like very often when I watch other players in the flow world doing various different things, there's always a piece of me inside my head thinking, okay, so what would my version of this look like? What would I change? What would I keep the same and everything? And there had been enough online events so far this year that I kind of put that away in my back pocket and was just like, okay, so what's the DrexFactor version of this? And of course, one of my big goals for the year was to create jobs for some of my friends. Even before the outbreak happened and everything, it was one of those things that I wanted to try and get the income from my channel to the point where I could hire people to help me run it, whether it be editing or marketing or any of that kind of stuff. So being able to hire people to either instruct at, perform at, or help run this event was kind of up that alley and something that I was interested in being able to dive in on. And so far, so good on that call. So overall, in coming into the online festival ecosystem and everything, it seemed like there was kind of already a lot of players who were directly emulating the experience of being at a physical flow festival and everything. But I felt like there was a place for me to offer something slightly different in this ecosystem. Namely, I feel like part of what's integral to how I represent myself as a content creator is that even though I'm sometimes doing some complex things in terms of poi tech or dance and everything, also fundamentally I feel like I simplify things a lot. That it is my job to kind of give a streamlined explanation for things and also to present things in a way where you're cutting out all of the extraneous elements and you're just focusing on what you want to learn. So with that in mind, I wanted to create an event that was going to have very few distractions, feel like it was engineered to create a good experience for the people going to it. That is, that it was going to center around presenting information to them in a way that was going to feel very intuitive, something that was going to feel very user-friendly. So one of the pieces of this, and also too, I feel like one of the key pieces in putting this event together was figuring out the platform to put it on. As I said before, a lot of the other flow events were putting their offerings on Twitch or on Zoom, and number one, there was just no easy way to be able to sell tickets to it, and in fact most of the events didn't even bother. But also too, it was one of those things that it felt like in trying to create these events, people were having to work around the software rather than with it, if that makes sense. Now a few months ago, I started consulting for an event company here in DC called Profs and Pints, and that's how I found out about Crowdcast. Crowdcast is a webinar platform that is very closely aligned with Patreon, which I'm also a huge fan of. But it's essentially built around creating a really simple and streamlined interface for online events and including the paywall in the interface to it. So it's all very slick. I love the interface to it. It's really, really simplified and everything. And the way it handles interactivity with the audience is also really striking to me, namely that it has ways to ask questions of people that are presenting and everything and have people in the audience vote on them. You can also invite people on screen and everything. It basically feels like a more intentional version of Zoom, if that makes sense. So that led me to wanting to create an event around Crowdcast. So I knew that I wanted to create an event that was going to be very streamlined and user-friendly. I knew that I wanted to create employment opportunities for my friends in so doing. And I knew that I had a platform that was going to support the intention of that event. So there was only one more thing that I needed, and that's something that is actually kind of still in process right now. And that, of course, is the startup funds in order to make it happen. So to this end, I reached out to a number of companies that I have had really good relationships with throughout the past few years and everything, and asked them if they would want to get involved in the event. So basically, I kind of reached out to a couple of these companies and everything and like outlined for them, okay, here is my vision for the event and everything, and I would love to see if I can bring you on as a sponsor. how exactly can we create enough value for you? What can this event offer you as a company that would be worth putting in some initial seed money in to make this happen and everything? And a couple conversations later and everything, and we had a much more clear idea of how these pieces could fit together. And it also just happens to be that it helped us clarify our vision of some of the ways that people enter into and interact with the event itself. So it wound up being helpful for me too. Those companies, as of me recording this, that have said yes to this and everything include Matrix Fire Safety, Fun in Motion Toys, and Ultrapoi. All three of these companies, they basically reached out and I was like, hey, I'm creating this event and I think there are some opportunities here to be able to put your brand in front of my audience and everything, and plus which it will help me be able to take care of some of the upfront costs of creating the event and everything. Would you like to get involved? And it also helps that these are companies whose products I really love and that I would want to put in front of a bigger audience anyhow. So we have our mission, vision, and brand identity in place. We have our platform in place, and we have our support in place. So the obvious question that comes next, of course, is what comes in the form of actually running the event. And we're going to cover that in the next video. I will be talking a little bit about assembling a production staff, about putting together the lineup and everything, and most importantly, figuring out what the program of the event that was going to support that mission and vision was going to look like. So, yeah, tune in for that next one, which I think will be coming either on Wednesday or Thursday. If you are interested in the event, you can head on over to crowdcast.io/e/DrexFest 2020 to get more information and purchase tickets and everything. I am also aware of the fact that today is Blackout Day, so I'm not going to tell you to go buy your tickets today, but maybe go buy them the day after. I do want to support these efforts and be an ally and everything. So at the very least, go check out some of the information there, and of course the Crowdcast platform, and see how you feel about it, both as an interface as well as a way to produce events like this. Are you interested in creating your own online event? I'm really curious. In what ways do you think that you could add something to the wide world of online flow events right now? What would be your hook? What would be something unique that you would bring to the table? And of course, what do you think of events that have already happened? Positives and negatives. Let me know down in the comments. And if you dug this video, please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help other people find it. And an enormous thank you to my wonderful supporters on Patreon. Without them, this video and all the videos on this channel would not exist. If you would like to sign up to support the work that I'm doing, and if you don't have the means, now of all times, believe me, I get it, but if you do, I would appreciate it. Head on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and sign up. You get early access to all of my content if you want it, as well as a say in topics I tackle in the future and some behind the scenes stuff too. Awesome. Thanks so much for watching, and I will be back with more later on this week. Peace.